Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. How many times have you heard someone look you in the eye and say, I've changed? But when the storm hit, when the pressure rose, when the test came, they slipped right back into the same old patterns. Words are easy. Tears are easy. Promises are easy. But real change is not proven by what you say. It's proven by what you do when nobody's watching. And tonight, we're going to find out the truth behind those words. They said they've changed, but have they? They said they've changed, but have they? You see, it's easy to put new clothes on the outside. It's easy to polish up the image. It's easy to rehearse the right words. But the real question is not what you wear, not what you post, not what you say, but what lives inside of you when nobody is watching. Change is not proven by the announcement of your lips. Change is proven by the alignment of your life. People will tell you, I'm not who I used to be, but time will test that. Pressure will test that. Conflict will test that. It's not the introduction of change that matters. It's the endurance of change. And because you can promise me in a moment of guilt, you can cry in a moment of weakness, you can apologize when you've been caught. But what happens when the pressure is off, when nobody is looking, when temptation comes creeping back in, knocking on the same door it always knocked on? If you are truly changed, you don't answer that knock the way you used to. If you are truly changed, you don't walk back into the same darkness you came out of. Real change has proof. Real change has fruit. Real change has consistency. And don't be fooled by words. Don't be swayed by declarations, because words can be dressed up like a costume, but character is revealed over time. The same mouth that said, I've changed, can also say, trust me again. But trust is not given because of a statement. It is rebuilt by demonstration. Trust is not rebuilt by tears. It is rebuilt by time. Trust is not rebuilt by promises. It is rebuilt by patterns. And they said they've changed, but have they? You have to be discerning enough to know the difference between repentance and repetition. There are people who will cry over the consequences but never change the behavior. There are people who will say they're sorry, but they're only sorry they got caught. Real change doesn't just grieve over the consequences, it shifts the conduct. Real change says, I don't ever want to walk back down that road again. Real change is not temporary, it's transformational. And sometimes you need to pause long enough to ask yourself, why am I so quick to believe that words equal change? Maybe because you want to believe it. Maybe because you're tired of being disappointed. Maybe because you're longing for the relationship to be restored, for the friend to be trustworthy, for the family member to finally be different. But longing doesn't create change. Hoping doesn't create change. Only surrender, accountability, discipline, and truth create change. And so when someone tells you they've changed, watch them. Not for a day, not for a week, but watch them in the seasons, watch them in the storms, watch them in the wilderness, because change that can't survive the test of time is not real change. It's just a performance. And there are some people who know how to act different but never become different. And acting different will fool you for a while. Acting different will have you thinking something new is happening. But eventually, the mask gets heavy, the costume gets uncomfortable, and the performance ends. Then you're left staring at the same old character you thought had been rewritten. And let me tell you something, just because they said they've changed doesn't mean you have. To put yourself back in the same position to be wounded, protect your heart, guard your spirit. Don't hand over access to someone who hasn't proven transformation. Forgiveness is free, but reconciliation is earned. Mercy can be instant, but trust must be rebuilt. Love can be unconditional, but boundaries must be intentional. And too many of us confuse grace with gullibility. Grace says, I release you. Gullibility says, I'll let you back in with no proof. Grace sets you free from bitterness. Gullibility sets you up for another cycle of pain. You have to know the difference. You have to stand strong enough to say, I can love you, I can forgive you, but I won't put myself in harm's way again until I see fruit. And they said they've changed. But have they? Real change is not in the proclamation, it's in the practice. It's in the discipline of choosing differently day after day. It's in walking past the old temptation and saying, that doesn't control me anymore. It's in facing the same pressure and refusing to buckle the way you did before. It's in speaking truth when lying would have been easier. It's in showing up consistently when once you disappeared. And don't tell me you've changed. Show me. Don't tell me you're different. Live it out, because your life is louder than your lips. Your actions preach louder than your declarations. And over time, who you really are will always reveal itself. And some people want the credit for change without the cost of change. But change will cost you comfort. Change will cost you excuses. Change will cost you friends who only knew how to relate to the old you. Change will cost you environments that fueled your weakness. Change will cost you the applause of people who liked you better broken, because your wholeness convicts them. Change is not cheap. It's expensive. That's why so many say they've changed, but so few actually do. And maybe I'm talking to you right now, not just about people in your life, but about you. Abby, you've told yourself, I've changed. But when you get back in the same situation, you act the same way. Maybe you said, I'll never go back to that again. But in a moment of weakness, you slid right back into the cycle. Don't condemn yourself. Don't give up. But understand this, change doesn't happen by accident. Change is intentional. Change requires a made-up mind. Change requires new habits. Change requires accountability. Change requires surrender. And it's not enough to say, I want better. You have to build better. You have to practice better. You have to endure better. And when you fall, you have to get back up and choose better again. Real change is not proven in the absence of struggle. It's proven in the persistence through the struggle. And they said they've changed, but have they? Don't let the smooth words fool you. Don't let the tears cloud you. Don't let the promises trap you. Stand still long enough to watch the fruit, because a tree is known by its fruit, not by its leaves. And people can wave their leaves all day long. They can decorate themselves with the appearance of transformation, but sooner or later, the fruit will tell the truth. And so hold steady, be wise, don't rush to believe, don't let loneliness make you desperate, don't let longing make you blind. Protect your peace, because peace is too expensive to give away cheaply. Protect your heart, because your heart is the wellspring of your life. Protect your destiny, because your destiny is too important to gamble on unproven promises. And they said they've changed, but have they? They said they've changed, but have they? And the danger of believing too quickly is that you end up recycling the same pain, the same betrayal, the same disappointment over and over again. You keep telling yourself, maybe this time it's different, but different is not declared. It is demonstrated. You can't lease. Your ears pull you into what your eyes can't verify. Because if the fruit doesn't match the speech, you are buying into an illusion. And change cannot just be cosmetic. It cannot just be a shift in language or tone. Change cannot just be temporary behavior modification that shows up long enough to win you back, long enough to earn your trust, long enough to get what they want. No, true change is born out of conviction, not convenience. Conviction will change you when nobody is watching. Conviction will make you do right when wrong feels easier. Conviction will hold you steady when your flesh wants to run back to the same pattern. And convenience, on the other hand, will mimic change until the circumstances shift. Convenience will smile at you, speak kindly to you, reassure you with the words you wanted to hear. But the moment things get hard, the moment the pressure rises, the moment the cost of staying different outweighs the benefits, convenience will reveal its true colors. That's why you cannot put your future, your destiny, your heart, your peace into the hands of someone who is only convenient but not convicted. And they said they've changed, but have they? If you really want to know the truth about someone, don't watch them when they're in the spotlight. Watch them in the shadows. Don't watch them when they're surrounded by people. Watch them when they're alone. Don't watch them when they're being applauded. Watch them when nobody is clapping. Because who they are in private is who they really are. And you cannot afford to be blinded by performances. And some of you have been living in cycles because you believed a speech instead of studying a pattern. You let someone's words dictate your decisions only to find out later that their actions didn't line up. And every time you got hurt, every time you were betrayed, every time the cycle repeated, it wasn't just them breaking your heart. It was you refusing to learn the lesson. It's time to learn the lesson. It's time to stop falling for the costume. It's time to stop mistaking performance for transformation. And you have to discern who belongs in your circle. Everybody who smiles at you doesn't mean well for you. Everybody who apologizes doesn't mean they've repented. Everybody who says they've changed doesn't mean they've transformed. Some people want access without accountability. Some people want your presence without paying the price of being trustworthy. Some people want your love without giving you loyalty. And you must reach a point in your life where you love yourself enough, value yourself enough, respect yourself enough to say, I will not lower my standards just to keep someone in my life who refuses to rise to the level of their words. Because if someone truly values you, if someone truly cares for you, if someone truly recognizes your worth, they will do more than say they've changed. They will fight to become who they need to be. And they said they've changed, but have they? You see, life has a way of testing change. You can say you're patient, but life will send you traffic jams, long lines, and waiting rooms to see if your patience is real. You can say you're honest, but life will present you with shortcuts, opportunities to lie, easy ways to cheat to see if honesty is in your heart or just in your mouth. You can say you've healed, but life will send you reminders of the pain, whispers of the past, echoes of the betrayal to see if you still bleed from the wound you claim is closed. And change is not tested in convenience. Change is tested in conflict. Change is not proven in peace. Change is proven under pressure. And if you want to know if somebody has really changed, watch what happens when they're squeezed. Because when life squeezes a person, what's inside of them comes out. You can't hide it. You can't disguise it. You can't cover it up with pretty words. Whatever is in the heart will flow out of the mouth and will show you in the actions. And maybe this isn't just about them. It's about you. Maybe you've been telling yourself, I'm not the same. I've grown. I've changed. And yet every time the old temptation shows up, you feel yourself getting pulled back. Every time the old habit whispers your name, you find yourself giving in. Every time life presses on you, the old version of you rises back up. But don't let that discourage you. Don't let that make you think you're a failure. Change is not instant. Change is not a one-time declaration. Change is a process. And it takes time to rewire your mind. It takes time to build new patterns. It takes time to strengthen new habits. It takes time to break the cycle. Don't give up on yourself just because you stumbled. Don't walk away from your process just because you slipped. Real change is not the absence of mistakes. It's the persistence to keep getting back up until the mistake no longer has power over you. And they said they've changed, but have they? Ask yourself that same question. Have you truly shifted, or are you just rehearsing the right lines? Have you really grown, or are you just pretending for the approval of others? Are you really healed, or are you just hiding the scar under the makeup of a smile? Are you really delivered, or are you just on a break until the next opportunity arises? You can't lie to yourself and grow. You can't deceive yourself and expect to walk in freedom. And the greatest change starts with brutal honesty. Honesty with yourself about where you really are, about what you're really struggling with, about what still has a grip on you. Because you can fool people, but you can't fool your destiny. You can perform for the crowd, but you can't perform for the calling. Your purpose requires authenticity. Your assignment requires integrity. Your future requires transformation. And you have to be willing to strip away the image and face the truth. You have to be willing to look at the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror, and admit, I want to change, but I'm not there yet. And that honesty will open the door to real transformation, because you cannot heal what you hide. You cannot fix what you fake. You cannot change what you refuse to confront. And they said they've changed, but have they? And if you want to know the answer, stop listening to the speeches and start watching the seasons. Stop listening to the tears and start watching the time. Stop listening to the promises and start watching the patterns. Because time will always tell the truth. Consistency will always reveal the reality. Patience will always uncover what performance tried to disguise. And if you want to walk in real freedom, if you want to live in real change, if you want to experience real growth, you must be willing to pay the price. Change requires sacrifice. Change requires surrender. Change requires discipline. Change requires letting go of the old you so the new you can emerge. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Because when you truly change, not only do you break free from your past, but you also step boldly into your future. And they said they've changed, but have they? They said they've changed, but have they? Because the evidence of change is not found in what people claim about themselves. It's found in what they consistently produce. You cannot say you've been transformed while reproducing the same chaos, the same confusion, the same dysfunction that you carried before. When something has truly shifted on the inside, it creates new fruit on the outside. A bitter tree cannot suddenly produce sweet fruit just because it announces it has changed. The nature must be altered. The roots must be healed. The soil must be different. And this is why many people live disappointed, because they want fruit from soil that has never been renewed. They want sweetness from a tree that has never been pruned. They want loyalty from a heart that has never been disciplined. They want faithfulness from a spirit that has never been broken and rebuilt. You can't harvest what doesn't exist. You can't expect transformation from someone who has only rehearsed imitation. And they said they've changed, but have they? And here's the thing. You don't have to be bitter to be wise. You don't have to be hard-hearted to be discerning. Some of you think that being watchful makes you unloving, but it doesn't. Love without wisdom is gullibility. Forgiveness without boundaries is self-destruction. Mercy without discernment is an invitation to repeat the same cycles of pain. You can be gracious and still guard your heart. You can be kind and still protect your peace. You can forgive and still keep your distance until change is proven. And too many times you've handed over your trust because you wanted companionship. You've opened the door too quickly because you were afraid of being alone. You've silenced your discernment because you wanted so badly for the story to be different this time. But you cannot afford to gamble your peace on the possibility of pretense. You cannot afford to sacrifice your destiny just to soothe your loneliness. You cannot afford to trade your purpose for the illusion of someone else's progress. And they said they've changed, but have they? Watch their habits. Habits will tell you more than speeches ever will. Habits are silent testimonies of the heart. Habits are the footprints of true character. Anybody can dress up for the day, but habits reveal what happens day after day. What do they default to when nobody is asking for accountability? What do they choose when the spotlight is off? Habits whisper louder than words. Habits preach sermons without opening their mouths. And don't you know that even you are defined by your habits? Your destiny is tied to the rhythms of your daily choices. You don't rise to the level of your declarations. You fall to the level of your disciplines. You can say you want greatness, but your habits will determine if greatness can live in your life. You can say you've moved on, but your habits will decide if you stay free or drift back into chains. You can say you've matured, but your habits will reveal if you're still chasing childish things. And they said they've changed, but have they? Because real change means the old places lose their grip on you. Real change means you don't just resist temptation, you begin to despise what once controlled you. Real change means your appetite shifts. What used to attract you now repels you. What used to hold you now disgusts you. That's how you know you're not just suppressing behavior, you're walking in transformation. And yet so many people settle for behavior modification without true transformation. They change their vocabulary, but not their values. They change their tone, but not their truth. They change their environment, but not their essence. And you've got to understand the difference, because behavior modification can fool the eyes, but it cannot fool the spirit. Transformation cannot be faked. Transformation cannot be imitated. Transformation produces evidence that stands the test of time. And they said they've changed, but have they? Time is the great revealer. Seasons are the great testers. Pressure is the great validator. It doesn't matter how convincing someone sounds in the moment. If the foundation hasn't shifted, the house will fall when the storm comes. The storm is not your enemy. It's your ally, because it reveals who and what is real. Don't curse the storm. Don't resist the season of testing, because storms strip away the illusion and show you what you're really working with. And maybe you've gone through storms not because you were weak, but because God was revealing who around you wasn't strong enough to walk with you. Maybe the storm exposed the people who claimed I had changed but had not. Maybe the storm wasn't about breaking you. It was about exposing them. Maybe the storm was sent to save you from being tied to counterfeit connections. And they said they've changed, but have they? Ask yourself, why do you want to believe it so badly? Sometimes the desperation for love, the longing for restoration, the hunger for companionship will blind you to reality. You keep trying to paint over red flags with white brushes. You keep trying to excuse the patterns because you want the promise. But ignoring truth never produces freedom. Closing your eyes to reality doesn't change the reality. Believing a lie doesn't transform it into truth. And at some point, you must be willing to sit in the discomfort of waiting for real change instead of rushing to embrace counterfeit change. At some point, you must be willing to honor yourself enough to say, I will not settle for temporary fixes. I will not accept borrowed words. I will not be manipulated by promises without proof. At some point, you must believe that you deserve better than rehearsed speeches. You deserve real transformation. And they said they've changed, but have they? Don't rush. Don't force. Don't lower your standards. If it's real, it will stand the test of time. If it's real, it will produce fruit without being pushed. If it's real, it won't collapse when life gets hard. Wait for the fruit. Watch the patterns. Discern the difference. Because your future is too precious, your peace is too valuable, your destiny is too important to risk on empty words. And you too must wrestle with this question. question, not only in how you view others, but in how you view yourself. You've been saying, I'm not the same person I used to be. But are you? You've been saying, I've grown, I've matured, I've healed. But have you? When the fire comes, do you still melt the same way? When temptation knocks, do you still open the door? When anger rises, do you still explode the same way you did before? You can't live in denial. You can't live in pretense, because true transformation starts when you stop lying to yourself. And there's power in admitting where you are. There's freedom in confessing, I'm still struggling, because only then can you be delivered. Only then can you be restored. Only then can you be rebuilt. You don't change by pretending. You change by confronting. You don't transform by faking. You transform by facing the truth head on. They said they've changed, but have they? Because the measure of change is not in the excitement of the moment, but in the endurance of the journey. Anybody can declare something new when emotions are high, but can they maintain it when the feelings fade? Words are cheap when adrenaline is pumping, but the real test is when life goes quiet, when nobody is there to cheer them on, when no spotlight is shining. Real change is not measured in the declaration. It is measured in the discipline. And discipline is the gatekeeper of destiny. Without discipline, you will always return to the same cycle, the same habit, the same dysfunction. You can cry about it. You can pray about it. You can announce that you're done with it. But without discipline, you will find yourself back in the same place, apologizing for the same actions, explaining the same mistakes, promising the same change all over again. Discipline separates desire from destiny. Desire wants it. Discipline works for it. Desire talks about it. Discipline walks it out. Desire imagines it. Discipline builds it. And they said they've changed, but have they? Look at how they handle temptation. Look at how they manage responsibility. Look at how they treat people when there's nothing to gain. Look at how they behave when no one is keeping score. These are the places where the authenticity of change shows up. Because if someone only treats you right when they want something from you, that's not transformation, that's manipulation. If someone only behaves as well when they're being watched, that's not maturity, that's performance. If someone only controls themselves when they fear consequences, that's not growth, that's fear of punishment. Real change is consistent in private, in public, in pressure, in peace. And you must stop letting tears talk louder than time. Tears can be genuine, yes. Tears can be sincere, yes. But tears alone are not the proof of change. You can weep over the damage without changing the behavior that caused the damage. You can cry about the consequences without correcting the conduct. You can feel sorry for a moment without shifting for a lifetime. Tears may water the seed, but it is action that grows the fruit. And they said they've changed, but have they? And don't you know that sometimes people will change their approach just to regain access? They know the words you want to hear, the apologies you've been waiting for, the behavior that seems right in the moment. But if the motive is access without accountability, the cycle will repeat. That's why discernment is critical. That's why you must not only hear what they say, but weigh what they show. And if you are honest with yourself, some of the cycles in your life are not the fault of the other person. They are the result of your refusal to wait for proof. You rushed past discernment because you wanted companionship. You ignored the warning signs because you longed for connection. You silenced your intuition because you were tired of being alone. But pain has taught you what denial tried to hide. Ignoring truth doesn't protect you, it prolongs you. And they said they've changed, but have they? Patience will reveal it. Consistency will confirm it. Pressure will test it, because you cannot fake integrity for long. You cannot fake discipline forever. You cannot fake fruit. Eventually life will squeeze out whatever is truly inside. And this is why the process of waiting is so important. Waiting is not punishment. Waiting is protection. Waiting reveals motives. Waiting separates pretenders from transformers. Waiting gives time for roots to grow deep. Waiting ensures that what looks strong on the surface is strong beneath the surface. Some of you need to stop rushing into relationships, into partnerships, into commitments without waiting for the evidence of change. Because when you rush, you risk repeating. And repeating cycles is how destinies are delayed. And they said they've changed, but have they? Real change means learning how to master yourself, mastering your thoughts, mastering your emotions, mastering your impulses. It means being able to face the same temptation and respond differently. It means being able to sit in the same environment without slipping back into the old version of yourself. It means outgrowing what once controlled you. And true change doesn't just alter what you do. It transforms who you are. It shifts your desires. It reshapes your appetite. It reprograms your thinking. You don't just resist the old ways. You lose interest in them. They no longer satisfy you. They no longer entice you. They no longer fit who you've become. That is when you know change is real. Not when you are fighting to resist the old, but when the old doesn't even look good to you anymore. And they said they've changed, but have they? Test it. Watch it, measure it, because if it is real, it won't collapse when the storm comes. If it is real, it won't vanish when the pressure rises. If it is real, it won't fade when the feelings die down. Real change survives seasons. Real change survives storms. Real change survives silence. And perhaps this is where you must turn the mirror back on yourself. Because it's easy to question others, but are you holding yourself accountable to the same standard? Are you truly growing, or are you just going in circles? Are you truly evolving, or are you just decorating the same cage with new paint? Are you truly different, or are you just rehearsing the lands? Gauge of difference without the lifestyle of difference. And they said they've changed. But have they? And maybe you've said to yourself, this time is different. But is it? You said you'd be more disciplined, but are you? You said you'd walk away from that habit, but did you? You said you'd guard your heart better, but have you? You said you'd grow past the pain, but have you? Sometimes the hardest person to confront is yourself. But until you confront yourself, you will always be vulnerable to the same cycles that break you. And change starts with confession, not the kind of confession that is meant to convince others, but the kind of confession that liberates you. The kind of confession that says, I am not where I want to be, but I refuse to lie about it. I am not who I used to be, but I know I still have ground to cover. That kind of truth opens the door for transformation. That kind of honesty is the soil where real growth takes root. And they said they've changed, but have they? And the only way to know is to let time speak. Time tells the truth when words lie. Time exposes the reality when appearances deceive. Time uncovers motives when emotions blind you. You cannot rush time. You cannot pressure time. You cannot manipulate time. All you can do is wait and watch, because time will always tell you what speeches cannot. And while you are waiting, don't waste your watch. Use that season to strengthen yourself, to heal yourself, to grow yourself. Because sometimes the reason you keep repeating cycles is not just because of them. It's because of what you've refused to address within you. As long as you are broken in the same place, you will always be vulnerable to the same manipulation. As long as you are desperate for validation, you will always settle for words without evidence. As long as you are afraid of being alone, you will always accept counterfeit connections. And they said they've changed, but have they? And maybe, just maybe, it's Tim. To shift the question, Stop asking only about them and start asking about you. Have you changed? Have you learned? Have you healed? Have you grown strong enough to say, I refuse to repeat that cycle again? Because when you change, your decisions change. When you change, your standards change. When you change, your circle changes. When you change, your life changes.